Today's job is going to be a 2017 Chevy Spark. It came in, it had 4 codes, essentially all transmission codes, and the P700 is just like, yo, there's a transmission problem. And then the other ones are the specific ones, which all 3 of them deal with the valve body. So I checked fluid levels and stuff, made sure that sensors were turning on or trying to turn on, and we pretty much, it needs a transmission. We pretty much decided it just needed a transmission. So we have a new one. This is going to be us replacing the transmission, filling it, and then going on a test drive, which this thing actually, because of the codes, you would be driving it, and then randomly the check engine light comes on, it starts like bucking, things are acting really weird, and when you come to a stop, it literally won't start accelerating much. Like it's like a few inches, it just starts to move. And then it finally builds up, and once you get to like 15 miles an hour, it'll start to accelerate. I'm gonna tear it apart. I've never torn one of these apart, so we're just gonna see what happens. So first things first, I'm gonna get the battery out and all of this stuff up in this area so that I can get to all the connectors, the shift cable and all that stuff, and the upper bolts for the transmission, and then we'll go underneath and work at trying to get it down, which I hope I don't have to drop the subframe, but we'll see. When you pop the red part out, you actually push down on this piece, and that's what takes the connector off. I'm gonna pull out this battery box with the ECU in it. We'll have more access to everything up there and see how it's going on. There we go. I'm gonna take off the shift selector, unplug some of the sensors. There's a few of the mounting bolts that'll be kind of terrible to get to. So way back down here is a nut, which I'm guessing is a bolt that goes through from the backside under the intake manifold. I'm gonna have to figure out what I wanna do to get that bolt out. The other 2 that I see up top are decently easy to get to. They're also hard to see with the camera. They're just underneath the head. There's one on either side. I'm gonna take off the shift selector cable. It's gonna be a little different. So I have this pick here. I'm putting it in the side, twisting outwards so that it opens up, and then you just pull up on it. There's a connector in the back by the firewall. Really easy to pop off. It has a couple of these zip tie clips. You can see the other one way back there. There we go. I have 3 of the transmission bolts out, and then the one down here, if you look down through there, you can see this is one of the other bolts for it. It holds the O2 sensor connector. So I took that one out, and there's one coming from the other direction that I got to get from the bottom. We're gonna go up and start taking apart everything underneath it, which is the axles and most likely the subframe, but I'll see if I can get away with that. America, America. Yeah, except for this was made in Korea. There we go. So we have the exhaust off because that's in the way of taking the crossmember down. I unbolted the front braces because they go to the front bumper and the fan shroud. We're gonna have to tie up the radiator like we did on that Cobalt. Because yeah, the crossmember holds the radiator in. The sway bar goes over the steering rack, so I have to figure out what I'm gonna do with that. So it goes over it. I unbolted the steering rack, but I have to unbolt the sway bar from the lower or the subframe. Right now I'm gonna take this mount off because we don't need it. And then I've got to figure something out because impact sockets are too big to fit in here for this 36 axle nut. So we might do this without taking the axles out of the hubs.
my wrench?
Too late. All right. By God. Yes? Maybe. If you bought one of these cars, you've been had. Okay.
High energy.
No, I don't have any.
Come on, bro. Give the viewers what they want.
If you want to know how we got here, it's a long and arduous story that I don't want to go over. So this is where you're at now in your how-to video. All right. All right, so getting the subframe out, it really only has 4 bolts. There's 2 little tiny 13s here that you take out as well, but there's just 4 big ones that hold it in.
You gotta unbolt the bumper.
Yeah, the little bumper stays. This is what I was talking about up there. Since this car is so tiny, we can't get the camera in anywhere. And then back here, we had to pull the starter out because in the starter hole, if you come over here, we can show you on this thing, are all the torque converter bolts. So we had to get the starter out to get to that because there's no other point to get to those. Also, we had to fight the sway bar to get over the steering rack because we didn't want to pull the steering rack. As of right now, there's 2 bolts in the transmission and the transmission mount is holding it up. So we're gonna bring the car down, pull the tranny out, and then, yeah, start putting everything back together. I have the engine supported somewhat.
Yeah, unfortunately, our engine support beam is there.
Currently on that. And it was supposed to be done, but Felpro sucks again and gave us the right oil pan gasket with the wrong gaskets in the bag.
Yeah.
So thanks, Felpro.
Correct part number,
Yeah.
wrong parts in the package from the factory.
Your gaskets suck and you can't even put them in the right bag.
See that?
Okay.
Get like 25 of those a day, man. Point of, oh. Let me go down with the motor a little bit. Hey.
See if you can go down on the engine a tiny bit. That way it's easier to put in.
That's probably about as much as you can go.
Okay. Oh, hold on. These are the torque converter bolts.
Okay.
Oh.
I need a crow's foot.
So the starter's on. I'm gonna put some of the brackets on. There's this ground wire next to the starter. So this thing twists, right? And it only goes on one way, which I think is that way, yep. And then it's got a little piece back here that you push down to get it to spin. I might need a flathead to push it. I don't know if my fingernail can do it. All right, so torque converter's tight. We got those 4 bolts tight. We have the lower block to bell housing bolts on and tightened. Hoses are on. Fred got this connector. I got this connector on. We have some connectors in the back plugged in. The starter's on. All of these are tight. So now we're gonna slide the, yeah, you fucking rack yourself.
It's all right.
It's like the 3rd time today.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us. But yeah, so I got like I took this bracket off to get up there. I took this ground off to get the starter out. Starter's up. We got this sensor back plugged in. This clip broke. It's not the end of the world. It's just gonna hang out here for the rest of its life. So now we're gonna put the axles in because I got this little bracket which covers the flex plate right here. I don't know why they couldn't have just made it.
Oh yeah, I guess we gotta take that bolt out of the block again and put that.
What, the one up here?
No, to put that bracket on. Oh.
I put it on.
You have it on.
Where-
I couldn't see
where are
it. I
you?
couldn't
Oh.
see it from where I was.
Yeah. So I got both those on. So now we're gonna just pull pull the knuckles out, slide the axles in, and then we're gonna put the subframe back on. Into the sway bar.
Cross member bolts here.
The big black ones. We got subframe up. We've got all this stuff bolted on and torqued for the tie rods, the lower ball joint and stuff. I'm gonna put on the front braces that were for the bumper, the 3 bolts on each side that do that. Put the exhaust up. I'm gonna get as much as I can under here done. That way when we go up top, it's just kind of final buttoning. And then the last thing is gonna be taking off the pan, putting in the new filters, and then putting oil in it. Exhaust is on. I have the O2 sensor plugged in. We got all the little bolts and stuff taken care of with it. So yeah, we're gonna go up top, finish plugging in everything that you can't see because it's all covered by a bunch of shit, and then get to putting fluid in it. Last but not least, we're taking the pan off so that we can either replace or install new transmission filters, because the junkyard says that they took out the filters. And then after we do this one, we'll do the torque converter filter. Perfect. I may just be weak, but it did. We're putting 7 quarts in because this calls for 6.55 quarts. But with how this works and how we're supposed to drain it, you slightly overfill it, run it through the gears, make sure everything works, make sure there's no codes, no weird stuff. And then once it gets up to the temperature, which is like 120 to 180, somewhere in between those two, you crack that drain plug out, and when it stops, or when it starts to drip, is when you cap it. So it'll pour out, and that's what that little tube does for us. That tube is, like I said, the level point. Anything above that tube will just pour out of it. Once it gets to pretty much level, it'll start dripping, we cap it, that's full. Make sure there's no codes, and then we'll start it, run it through the gears real quick, let it warm up. No codes. Oh, it's angry. That finally finished. It stopped dripping, or it stopped streaming out. It just started to drip out, which as soon as it starts to drip and no longer a stream is when you cap it. You don't wait for it to stop dripping. I did the whole thing where you turn it on, you run it through the gears, make sure that fluid gets everywhere, because if you get a junkyard transmission, it's been sitting without fluid for however long. You gotta let it get through it. So now we gotta put the wheels on. We'll go for a test drive, make sure that we don't have any codes or any weird driving habits again, and she's good to go. We've got it all wrapped up. The transmission acting funny, the little noises that you were hearing, essentially what it is these computers, you need to have a scan tool that can actually go in there and start a self-learn test for the new transmission. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be stuck in a neutral state, and you're just not, it's like a limp mode. Like the car will move, but it's not doing anything correctly. So if you don't have access to one of those special scan tools, and by special I mean like a Snap-on Solstice. So if you Google that, look that up, it's somewhere around $3,000 to $5,000 for this Solstice. So a scan tool like that, or if there's a person near you, because some people have those and they'll do mobile transmission programs. That's what needs to be done to have a new transmission put into one of these, because of course, they don't want to make it easy for regular people just to work on shit. You have to have thousands of dollars in tools to be able to do any of this stuff now, which we're trying to keep that as this is a process of doing it. And yeah, there are some places, like some transmission shops, that'll program it for you for like $100 or $200 at most. Or there's the mobile guys, which might be cheaper. I don't know how they charge. But it's something that has to be done. With it done, the car drives nicely. I just came back from like a 4-mile test drive. Shifts, you can floor it. Doesn't have anything weird. And with the codes that we had before, like I said, the car would just go into a, like, it was worse than the limp mode of just putting a transmission in it and not programming it. But we're here. Customer's gonna be happy. I think we're done.